Hi, how are we doing, people? So, um, this live thing is intended to be an advertisement for anybody who's new that was going to come across this channel. So I've got a few things that I want to speak to here firstly, before I get to some of the other aspects. So it's not going to be a wee quick short couple of minute video, unfortunately, for anybody who is new that comes across this. It's not something that you can discuss, or understand in a wee short, 2 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute video. There's a fair bit to understand and to go through. So first I'll start with, are you questioning the globe? Firstly I have to let you know that that's exactly who I am. I'm just a man who considers himself born into a culture, the same as everybody else, and you have that attribute that you just take the world as it's presented to you, particularly when it's coming through the avenues of your parents and supposed authority. So I'm just the same as anybody else in that regard. I believed, I wouldn't say believed fully, I just assumed that what I had been told and what had been presented to me was in fact true. Just see, make sure I'm working here, right. So I believed, no, I'm not going to use that word. I just assumed that what I was told was the truth. So first and foremost, you have to understand that for me, a man in my position, that is the stance I come from. I question the validity of things that are put to me by other human beings through my experience. Now, when I turned my attention to try and understand and question this assumption that the Earth is a globe, I found that it was lacking in anything that would justify me continually holding that to be a true thing, that I live on the exterior of a globe. Sorry, just bear with me, I'm getting distracted here. So I lost my train of thought. Aye. So there's a few things that you have to understand before we get any further. That is the stance. We were born into the claim it's a globe. That's what we have to question. Now, I know that it seems ridiculous because in people's eyes, people's minds, they have seen an image. They have seen the Earth depicted to them on a TV screen. They have been told that they are as a group of highly sophisticated, highly intelligent, superior beings who are going to a place known as the vacuum of space and have a vantage point of seeing our Earth as a whole from a distance. So it is going to seem ridiculous to people at first, because people in our generations, since the invention of the TV, have taken things that they see on the TV to be factual and true. What you have to do is you have to remove yourself from that position. You have to understand that if I was to show you something on a TV screen that defied your known experience of reality, like, a video of me flying or levitating, you would know through your intellectual honesty, your discernment, that there has to be some sort of trick. You understand through your own experience that that's not the case. People cannot fly, people cannot levitate, okay, unless they're using some form of advanced technology that we don't have a grasp on quite yet. So anything can be presented to you in the way of image, and it can be presented through a TV screen or in a picture, a painting, any of these things. You should know that that is in no way, shape or form enough to justify you accepting something as being true. That is the position I found myself in, because I understand that images and what I see in the TV can be manipulated. They can portray reality in people in a way that is nonsensical to my understanding of the physical existence that I'm in. So you've seen it, you see it in Hollywood movies, you see it in all sorts of TV programs. how, you know, they can edit and, you know, use sophisticated technology to make things appear as being real. So, again, you know, you have to remove yourself from that. And what I have to point out to you is that an image on your TV screen in no way, shape or form constitutes as any sort of scientific endeavour or scientific measurement of something being true. Okay? Now, when I say the word scientific and science, I am talking about it from my understanding and how I use the word. Science to me simply means exploration. It means a human being exploring the reality, the physical realm that we find ourselves in, and seeing what we find. That's it. That's what exploration really should be. There is something totally different going on with what we call science and what people accept as science. What is happening is that you have institutions professing they are under the guise of science, while at the same time they are pushing existential narratives. What I mean by existential narratives is stories of who we are, how we came to be, how the world came to be, what our future may be. These are existential fairy tales. That is not what real science is about. Real science, real exploration is about, you know, moving through the physical existence and finding what you find from one moment to the next. What you find in the natural world, what you find in regards to the substances within the natural world and the interaction of those substances. Okay, so when you look at mainstream now and what's been taught to your children and what was taught to you, it was a religious narrative, a story that is designed to encompass your psyche with a vision of who you are, where you are, and what life is. That should never be the case in real objective science. It should never be reading from storybooks and trying to give narratives like that. It should always be a pursuit from one day to the next, from one moment to the next, and advancing our understanding of the physical realm and the interaction of substances. Okay? So, that's what I mean by science. And you will note that, you know, the majority of mainstream and the institutions have, you know, wrapped science up an all-encompassing umbrella, and they just throw and pull out from that, you know, cesspool whatever they see fit in order to push certain agendas and to fit whatever narratives it is that they're trying to push. Okay, so also what you have to understand is even in the mainstream realms of science, there are subdivisions. Okay, so we have many different practices. You could call anything a science. If you wanted, you could call picking your nose an art, a science. There is a science to picking your nose. Getting the nail the right size, the right shape, elongated enough to reach the right place. So we have to understand and you know, express to each other when we're using these words. Language has been used in many different ways, and you know, somebody else's attached definition to a particular word may be different to yours. So we have to iron these things out. We have to understand exactly what the language is and what the words actually mean, and if we're discussing the same things. So in mainstream science and in the scientific understanding, there is subdivisions. We have the natural sciences, which is encompassed as chemistry, physics and biology. Things that take to do with direct reality, how things operate, what the interaction is between substances, what you can create out of mixing different substances. Okay, that's real world practicality, dealing with the things in our direct reality. Okay, you also have other aspects. So you have the social sciences, which is to do with cultures, you know, psychology, language. Also in these subdivisions, you have mathematics, which is classed as a formal science. It's a formal science because it is a language. It is only a useful tool in regards to you know, practical engineering or anything in reality that is practical and demonstrable Mathematics is a very useful tool in order to describe, you know, measurements, dimensions, areas, blah, blah, blah. But it always has to be attached to some aspect of our physical existence, so that, you know, I can then, you know, measure something or create something, and I can then give it a description which I can send to you, and if you understand that language, you can decode the language and you can recreate the practical reference that I am referring to in my mathematical description. So it is a useful tool, but it is classed as a formal science because it is only a language. The other reason is because, like any other language, I can use grammar to say Santa Claus is real, Santa Claus is not real. Both are grammatically correct. One is true, one is not. So mathematics is pretty much the same. In the realms of mathematics, you can go into the world of abstract, okay? Because it's just a language. You can create your axioms that you can start from, and you can wander away and create mathematical constructs that work as an artistic abstract expression. But there's a difference when people are making abstract concepts through the use of mathematics and then trying to attach it to being some sort of natural aspect of our everyday reality. Which leads me on to talk a bit more about the globe. Okay, because the globe, heliocentrism, a Big Bang cosmology, an existential narrative that emanates from the Vatican. Okay, the very same religious institutions that dominated society and still do to a certain degree, and push stories that I regard as psychological mechanisms and tools to control you and I. We can get into that a bit further as I move along. But the globe, I'm going to state it right here and now, has nothing measurable. It has nothing practical, nothing demonstrable. It is a concept, a narrative that has been pushed and is backed up by sophistry. Sophistry, for anybody who doesn't know, is a use of language, rhetoric, sophisticated language that is designed to bamboozle you, to seem legitimate, and to sway your opinion or your beliefs into a particular narrative or agenda. Okay, it's just a tool of manipulation. It's not honest. It's not objective. It's just used to push whatever agenda or narrative somebody is trying to push. So again, you're going to have to excuse me because I'm trying to be as concise as I possibly can and explain this to anybody new who's coming across, so that you may have a better understanding and you also know exactly who I am. Because again, I'm openly inviting anybody to come and discuss anything with me. And if you want to discuss the objective reality with me, I have a certain set of criteria that I will accept. And my criteria is practicality. Any claim that's being made to me about my objective reality must be in the form of practical demonstration. Okay? No language. So, just bear with me. As I say, it's really difficult to try and sum this up into a wee short thing. So I'm trying my best to kind of lay out the whole thing of who I am and where I'm coming from. Anyway, when we question the globe, as I say, when I talk about something being real, I can take anything that's real and I can demonstrate it to you. So if I was to say to you, here's a substance that's known as glass. It has a set form to it, it has dimensions to it, it has a volume, a capacity that, is holding a liquid, This is something that's tangible, it's something that is real, okay, that can be measured and demonstrated to you. Like right now, I'm going to demonstrate, there is a bottle. It is filled with the substance known as water. That substance has no form, it has no shape to it. Okay? It will seek the lowest point in any void if it is met by a resistance that it cannot penetrate, it's going to dam up, it's going to fill up, and it's going to continually fill the void or the shape or the space, the containment that it is in. The surface is always going to be in an equilibrium. It is always going to be a horizontal plane. Okay? The water does not have the ability to conform to the outside of shapes and objects. It's formless. It has no elasticity. It has nothing to bind each molecule, if you like, to the other to give it elasticity, shape and form. It's formless. So when I say to you, that's my reality, that's what I find. We use that substance to level. We build reservoirs, canals, dams, lakes. We have oceans that contain that very substance. And it is known through our whole existence and by everybody who's alive right now that that substance has no form, it has no shape. Everybody knows it's going to show us the level line. That's the standard I expect. That's what I accept as being scientific. Or if somebody wants me to accept some aspect of my reality, they have to show me in a practical way. Now, to show you the contrast here and what is actually happening with maybe your mind right now as you're watching this, you have this image of a sphere Earth that you see on your TV screen. And you're thinking, how can they be lying? How could anybody prove to me they're lying? How could it be so big? How could they be lying and get away with this? And you would probably ask me, debunk space, debunk the images they show me. This substance here is one of the only things you need. Because again, you can understand the substance. You can demonstrate it to yourself. You can demonstrate it to other people. It is an objective fact. It is really real. And it's in our immediate reality. The reason that you know that the lion and the image that's being depicted on your TV screen is not true is because they are depicting the earth with the substance known as water behaving in a way that is not real. Okay? The image contradicts my reality and your reality and your understanding and experience of reality. What has happened is that this image has been pumped through generations. It has been plastered through the media and continually so. You have been seeing that image since you were a very young child, impressionable, when you never had the critical faculties of discernment and the ability to question claims that were being put to you properly. You put it to the back of your mind. You accepted it as being true because everybody else was saying it. The teachers are saying it, my parents are saying it, the TV's showing me it. And again, you're asking, how can that be the case? How could they be lying? Oh, how do I know? What I'm asking you to be is a direct realist. I'm asking you to stand firm as the scientist. You know, exploration does not belong to an institution. It belongs to you as an individual. It's up to you to understand your own mind, understand reality for yourself, no having some authority, some pseudo-intellect sitting on a pedestal trying to tell you what's correct, what's not correct, what's true and what's false. If you put yourself in that position, I have to call you a moron. You are willfully ignorant. You deserve to be lied to and have the piss taken out of you, which is exactly what these institutions are doing. So you have to understand how it works. An image on a screen does not trump our direct experience of reality that we all share. Because remember, I'm talking about us as a majority here. I'm not talking about a small clique of men and women who are professing that they are achieving some vantage point that you and I have never witnessed. The reason you know they're lying on that one substance alone is because of its behaviour, its physicality. What you might get is people telling you that they'll invoke their, what I call, cult buzzwords and phrases, mantras. And again, I'm pretty sure anybody new is saying the same thing to themselves right now. Gravity. Gravity. A mystical non-entity that has no dimensions and no physicality. A mathematical construct, a concept that has been created as the central core of a narrative known as heliocentrism, globular Earth. That concept requires a mystical energy, like a god, just the same as any other religious existential narrative requires. Now, when you say gravity, do you understand what you mean by gravity? Do you understand that there's varying concepts of that word? I'm going to go with the majority that think they know what it is, and that is that the mass of the earth is pulling everything towards the centre. I'm going to talk more in another hangout about this aspect of pull, force. We're going to discuss what these things actually are. Now, talking about your globular earth and its word gravity, and somebody trying to tell me that the substance that I know has no shape or form to it and is incapable of supporting itself as to display shapes and convexity upon its surface, are going to try and tell me that this non-entity, this non-geometric, non-physical force is somehow magically allowing water to bend and maintain the bend upon its surface around the exterior of a globular earth. Now, what you have to ask is the questions. We can get into depth about gravity and its nonsense, okay? But what you have to be asking is that what is it about this non-geometric, non-entity force known as gravity? What is it that it's injecting or doing to the substance known as water that now allows it to behave in a way that is contrary to my understanding of physical reality? Is it injecting an invisible wallpaper paste? Is it injecting some form of energy that creates a jelly-like texture to it? That allows the water to bind together and act like jelly and bend around the exterior of the shape? I mean, it's absolute nonsense, is what it is. It's more of the sophistry, complicated crap language, trying to prop up a lie. And you think it's not as simple as that? Well, I beg to differ. Away you go and test this stuff for yourself. Away you go and look at history, the constructs, the things that we've designed and built that we still utilise to this very day under the understanding of how this substance behaves. The most accurate measuring tool to establish level, particularly over a large distance. More accurate than any man-made instrument. So, you're stuck between, a rock and a hard place, if you like. I've got this image that I see on the TV. I've got this baldy, tattooed Scottish guy telling me to trust my own senses and the substances in my reality. The choice is now yours. It's up to you whether you want to embrace your reality or remain in the realms of woefully ignorant. That's just one aspect. I'm using this aspect as an example, of people using language and complicated concepts to try and prop up and explain an image on a TV screen when it's so simple. I don't even need language. I could demonstrate how water behaves to anybody that's alive and they would understand. Everybody uses the understanding from day to day. Other aspects of this globe, again, it comes under the guise of science, a word again that they just like to use because they have taken the superior high ground over people and managed to convince people that this complicated language of mathematics attached to science that's too much for the average man to get is the be all and end all. It's not the be all and end all. Again, you're going to have to bear with me because I'm continually losing my train of thought here. So, anyway, I'll just try and fire back in as best I can. I'm lost. I mean, the mathematics it's a concept. That's all it has. It has no direct measurement. You know, again, you have to ask yourself, you know, why do we have no direct measurement? What is really going on here with this globe Earth? Remember, that's the thing we're questioning. I'm going to get to what flat Earth is in a wee minute, okay? But you have to stand and ask the questions of the globe Earth. Now, it has no direct measurement. It has no practical demonstration. You cannot, you know, take a rock, stick it in a vacuum, levitate it, you know, throw in a gas that clings to the rock inside the vacuum, separate from the vacuum, and have water all clinging around it. Anything else that's real in my reality can be scaled up and down and can be represented accurately using the substances that I am making the claims about. That's how we know it's real. When you look at a globe, you see a plastic toy or you see an image on your TV screen. And because you have human beings who are acting like it's real and playing the part that it's real, it's confusing you. You must understand, I'm sure that there is nobody that is that gullible and naive anymore, that they understand that human beings tell lies. Why this big lie? I could invoke so many possibilities for why that is. What I'm going to point out to you first and foremost is that we do not go to motive before we investigate the scene. Okay? But from what I can see, through my understanding and my introspective, you know, work that I've done, is that a lot of these things are psychological mechanisms to control. Okay? Being a hairless monkey, living in bewilderment on a spinning ball, flying through an infinite void with no rhyme or reason to it, creates a psychological foundation in you and I of bewilderment. Bewilderment which brings about stress, anxiety, fear. The necessity to cling to apparent certainty. Ideas and concepts that fit our subjective interpretations and needs. A psychology that tells you everything's been discovered. Clever and smart people who existed before you discovered it all and figured it all out. But they were way advanced, they were super brains. Look, we idolise them, they must have been. And they understand the complexity of this language. These are deliberate tactics to subdue you, to throw you off track. You are a sentient being who has a nature of exploration and inquisitiveness. Look at any child. It does not give a shit for yesterday or tomorrow. Only about the moment and its curiosity for its experience and the reality that it finds itself in. These narratives and these stories, Big Bang, heliocentric, hairless monkey cosmology, subdues that natural aspect, that inquirer that you are. So then you start to look at other aspects. Well, what am I going to do with myself now? Get a job, get a family, go on holiday, buy a new car, die. Why do we have restricted areas? Who are these human beings that are the same as you and I, who think that they have some sort of right to dictate where you and I can and cannot go? We have restricted areas at what we know as the northern regions and the most northern regions and the most southerly regions. We also have areas in between that are restricted access that you and I cannot freely go and explore. So, there is, in my understanding, there is a real push to perpetuate this nonsense, to stop you and I from being inquirers. What I have seen by questioning the globe is a barrage of zealot cult behaviour from vagrants. Over the last 4.5 years, or whatever it is, I have been met with nothing but the same old tired rhetoric. I have been met with ridicule. I've been met with, bullying tactics, all sorts of manipulative tactics, disruptive behaviour. I've had my channel sniped, porn played on my channel numerous times. I've been suspended for 3 months on places like YouTube, Facebook, by these people's actions. These are people who are professing they represent real science, they represent the globe heliocentrism, and that it's under the guise and banner of scientific. Yet they cannot offer any direct measurable proof. They cannot offer any practical demonstrations of their absurd claims. The only thing we get for them is propaganda, ridicule, disruption, slander. That is no people who are representing objectivity, exploration, real science. These are people who are protecting a religious, existential narrative. If the globe was indeed real, if we lived in a truly free society with a will to properly educate people, to have proper discernment amongst people, everybody would be invited openly to question any aspect, regardless of what it is, particularly when it's meant to be represented by objective science. It should be an open book. It should never be entertaining any notion of ridicule, propaganda. And I'm not just talking about faceless potatoes that we may encounter on interwebs. I'm talking about mainstream characters, like the priesthood, off the top of my head, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, Brian Cox. People like that. Now, if you go and look at these people, they don't offer you any actual measurable proof or practical demonstration of their concepts and professed reality. You get narratives, you get stories, you get nice music, you get fancy images. And at the same time, you get ridicule for anybody else who dares to question their narrative. That should be telling you that something is really wrong with what you hold to be true. So your attitude has to be that you understand that. Well, if it's true, it's true. I shouldn't be met by ridicule. I shouldn't be met by oppression, slander, propaganda. If this is coming from an avenue of real objectivity, it should be an open book. It should be clear and plain as day for all to see. But it's just not. The Globe will only offer you, fancy stories. Sophistry. Oh, look, there's a boat disappearing from the bottom upwards going over a curve. But it changes from one day to the next, and it's inconclusive all over the place. And again, we have to invoke that the water's now bending away from us and it's not flowing. Or some story about what's above our head, the sun, the moon, the stars. Again, I'm going to point out to people, you do not get anything, any information about what is beneath your feet and how the substances behave here in your immediate reality by looking at things above you that you can never get to. Which leads me into another aspect of this. This globe invokes continually optical phenomena. There is two different geometric understandings at play here. We have real world of measurement and stuff that we can quantify, we can measure, we can interact with in 3 dimensions. Anything that we utilise in that aspect of our existence is understood through the principles of Euclidean plane geometry. From construction to navigation. Okay? We start from a level line and a plumb horizontal, vertical. Okay? And we can calculate and we can set things up from that geometric understanding. That's the physical world. So if you go to an engineer, he will be using that. He'll be using an XY axis, a level plane, and a plumb line. Okay? And that's what we work from. That's used all across the board in the whole of the practical world. When we get into the realms of how we see the world, that's a different geometry. That's where they start to create concepts like the celestial sphere. How we see the world through our round globular eyes. Before I go any further with this, I'm just going to invite Gavin here so that he can add to this. I'm losing my way a wee bit because, as I say, it's so difficult to try and make this as concise as it possibly can be for anybody new who's coming across it. But mainly I just want to give you an idea of who I am and where I'm actually coming from, and also to lay out what I've gathered and understood now about this whole question. So just bear with me a wee second here. What I should have first, express to people is again, the aspects of, laying out the grounds when we're questioning this. People who are still coming with a mindset of authority in other people's words and opinions, you're going to see a lot of things like debate, and that this is being presented as some sort of debate. It's not a debate. A debate is for an idea, okay, a concept. We don't debate something that is objectively true. Okay? Sorry. I'm probably going to have to do this again because, as I say, I'm fumbling my way through it, but it's just going to have to do for now. I'm just tired of having to express these things to anybody that's new, that comes and tries to attach straw man misrepresentations to myself or anybody else who speaks like this. But I'll get to that. That's another aspect. So I'm just going to get back to what I was saying. The globe is invoking a different geometry. The real, tangible, 3D realm that we all move in 3 dimensions and exist in is treated as a plane. You know, as I say, from construction, you go and ask any engineer or construction worker, they understand these principles. Things are built square, perpendicular. We know this. We know that water levels. We can build a stretch of canal 100 miles long. And we know that from the first point to the last point, it has to be on an equal plane. Level, again, in our understanding in physical reality, is a level line from one point to another that does not deviate. Okay? And the mathematical conceptual realm of globe heliocentrism, they're going to tell you that level's not a straight line. Again, taking a dump on, practical reality. They're trying to tell you that a level is equal from the centre of a circle, from the central point of a circle to the outside circumference is what level means. In reality, that's not what level is. Level is an equal line with no deviation from one point to the other. Okay, so that we know if one point is slightly lower or slightly higher than the other point, we're now off of level. That's what level means. But that's just one aspect of the use of language and how they've twisted it. So, in the globe model, there is no exacting science of our vision. Okay? Now, as a human being, I'm speaking to you directly here. You understand that when you go out into the world, the way you see the world is that the floor you're standing on will come up to meet the level of your eye. The sky will come down and sit above that point, just at the level of your eye. And if you had walls or anything on your on the same level, they would appear to converge at the very same point, and everything gets smaller and diminishes, okay, the further it gets from you. This is where this globe has come in and hijacked three-dimensional tangible reality and tried to superimpose this other geometry over the top of it. That's why they will say, look, there's a boat directly out in front of you that appears to be going over a curve. Again, I have to help you to understand that the absurdity of a curve on a body of water that is now not flowing anywhere and maintaining the bend upon its surface. It is inconsistent from one day to the next because our vision is subject to conditions in the air, temperature, pressure, density. So many variations, there is no exacting science, tangible measurement of how we see the world. But yet this globe has hijacked it and tried to utilise it and use it to push the narrative that they want to be true, or that they want you to think is true. If it was a geometric sphere, oblate sphere, then from one day to the next, the curving water and ships going over would be the exact same, at the exact same point every time. And it's not. There's people all across the world now who are taking observations, optical phenomena, that are inconsistent from each other, contradictory. But yet this is the only real thing that this globe has to offer. As I say, if it's not that, it's 200 years ago such and such said so. Or some, story about what's above our heads. If I came to your home to measure the dimensions of your floor, and I pulled my measuring tape out and started to wrap it around the light bulb to get a grasp on the dimensions of the floor of your home, you would think I was an absolute lunatic. But yet, this thing that you are believing in, this globe, is doing the exact same thing. But to you it seems rational, it seems sane. Why? Because loads of people are repeating it. It's illogical. It's an absolute joke. So, I have given you a wee bit about who I am and where I stand. I'm a man of honesty, okay? And if something is real in my world, I accept it. I have no reason to want to, disbelieve the globe. If it was a globe, I accept it was a globe. I have no agenda to be a contrarian or to reject mainstream stories or narratives just for the sake of it. I'm a man of question, and I'm questioning things that are being put to me. And if it's real, you can practically demonstrate it to me. Gav, how you doing?
I'm good, my man. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm alright. I'm just going to share Gav and let him say a few bits to this as well. Just bear with me, Gav. I just need to shut these down so that I can present you here.
Right, I'll just, 1 sec. I just need to shut my door.
Cool.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
How's it going? How was your Saturday?
Oh, I'm going to get to that at the end, mate. I'm just trying to give an overview for anybody that's going to come across the channel. As I said to you, I'm going to put this on the new visitors part of the channel so that people understand who we are and where we're actually coming from, so there's no misunderstanding or confusion, So.
Aye, absolutely. It's not an easy task to try and summarise everything into a concise, whatever, 45 minutes or half an hour. But if anybody can do it, my man, you can.
Yeah. Well, I'm struggling. I've already lost my train of thought a couple of times here.
Yeah.
I've exercised the repetition too many times, I think.
No, I know what it's like, though. I mean, it is a topic that, spans into so many different areas of science, psychology, physiology, the words, language, there's so many aspects to it. It isn't easy to summarize it, so.
No. Well, what I'm trying to do is just point out, a kind of overview of who we are, and some of the aspects of the globe, just the kind of surface nonsense of it. So I'd got up to the point of, explaining the two geometries at play, the tangible three-dimensional world and the visible world. And just at that, I thought I would get you in just so that you can add to that.
Absolutely. Hold on until I find that later.
Yeah. And again, this is a perfect opportunity just before Gav goes in here. There's so much propaganda surrounding this, and people are confused and they don't understand how to separate the propaganda from the real people who are asking real questions. So, who I am, how I look, how I speak, my use of language, what my skin colour is, my tattoos, my hair, Gav's jumper, none of these things are relevant in any way, shape or form. But what you'll find particularly online is that there's a huge swathe of propagandists who continually make content focusing on these aspects. They are totally irrelevant to an individual asking an objective question. None of you are interested in any of that, and if you're wanting to know who the players are, you just look at the people who are perpetuating those types of games. Why do we not have adults willing to engage in rational, civil discussion about the objective reality that we all share? That's exactly what's required. That's what, real exploration, real science should be about, is individuals that can come together and actually discuss things objectively without bringing in the subjective spins. So,
I agree. Personal opinions and beliefs have nothing to do with objective science. So,
no.
But that's what they'll like to do. I take it it's just a way of deflecting attention. That's all they can really try and do.
Well, it's another tool of this aspect of manipulation, Gav, as you well know. And again, for anybody that's new, it's rife in all walks of society, through politics, through the whole board. And this is absolutely no different. you know, you'll find that when you become a person who's questioning some of these mainstream narratives, this is the type of thing that you're met by. And, you know, I know it through, you know, experience, you know, plenty of experience of, you know, people just continually making propaganda videos about me as a man, my integrity, some of the things I say, and they're never, you know, articulating and speaking to the content, the points that we are raising, because they have no answer. It's a lie. It's all founded on lies and bullshit. So the tools that they have to employ are things like propaganda. They have to try and manipulate the onlooker's perspective and view of what this whole question's like and what it's about.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So before Gav goes, you know, that's perfect for me just to cut in about what is flat Earth then. You know, because, you know, people are seeing this term flat Earth, and this is where a lot of the propaganda is. You know, you can search YouTube for all these characters who are slagging flat earthers, ridiculing flat earthers, you know, in particular a lot of the straw man aspects that people have adopted in regards to a model of flat earth. And that's what they're depending on. They want people to adopt this cartoon concept of what a flat earth is, and to stand as a representative of some non-entity, because we've not explored it to know what it actually is yet. But yet you have people who are pushing concepts and ideas, and people who are buying into them and representing them, which is creating a false dichotomy. It's creating a debate between the strawman globe and the strawman flat earth. And they're setting up debates and propaganda and ridicule left, right and centre. So these are aspects that people have to remove their attention from. Again, the question lies purely with the globe. No, people like me, I don't know the full dimensions. Gav doesn't know the full dimensions, but yet they'll continually try and misrepresent us and lump us in under an umbrella of a flat earther. You know, a flat earther who represents a particular model and dimension of what the earth actually is. And it's just not the case.
Yeah, as you say, they have to do that. They have to set up these false debates, because that's the only way to keep people, you know, fighting on two sides and not looking objectively and self-critically, you know, at what's going on. So,
and I could show people an endless amount of characters on here, and you could go to their content, and their content will only consist of ridiculing flat Earth or flat earthers. You will not find any actual measurement or tangible proof, practical demonstration of their claim. They only depend on you, you know, accepting their depiction of what flat Earth is and then tearing it apart. The reason that they're doing that is to try and reaffirm the belief in your mind of a globular Earth. You have to be very careful of these sneaky tactics that they're utilising and using. Okay, the globe is under question, and you have to have a standard and an understanding of what constitutes as actual measurable proof. And the globe has none of that.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more, Del. And all these channels, and you know, you don't see anything new coming. You know, I call it scientific constipation. You know, because you know, for the last 300 years, they've been telling us the same old stories, right? The same logical fallacies. You know, the top 10 nonsense proofsies. Most of them visible proofsies of the Earth. Absolutely nothing new coming. Just the same people in the guise of different personas, you know, hoping to pick up people who they associate or people like them, you know, appealing to certain characteristics. And all these people are doing is spouting the same old shite. You won't find anything on these channels whatsoever than the crap that you've already heard millions of times.
Exactly.
It really is. It's constipation, you know. I've got this picture of them sitting on the throne, Del, trying to squeeze out a new proof, you know, and nothing comes. There's no shape or form to anything they do, right? It's either just diarrhea hits the fucking bottom of the pan, right? Or they sit there on the throne trying to press out some new, you know, I don't know. It's a regurgitation of the same old shite that I've heard. It's pathetic. And they keep bringing these new people to the table too, you know? It's so laughable. So.
You know, we're sitting here telling you there is no direct, you know, measurement or tangibility to the claims that they're making. You should be asking, that's what the seriousness, that's what your focus of attention should be. Why is that the case? If it's true, if it's real, it should be easy. It should be practical, but it's just not. What should be telling you something.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And at that point, Dale, I'd maybe just like to tell people a little bit about who I am. So I'm going to keep it nice and short and sweet. But, I was and I am an ex-Globe Cult member, right? A very heavily brainwashed ex-Globe Cult member. Studied mathematics and physics at Glasgow University. I hold a double honours degree. In America, they would call it a double majors. So I have listened to all that stuff. I've sat in the lecture halls. I've done my wee degree. I've got my bit of paper, right? And basically 4 years ago, I woke up, or maybe it's 5, I'm not quite sure. Woke up to the fact that this is all nonsense. Yeah. So what I'm saying with that is that anybody can be fooled. Yeah. It doesn't matter your academic qualifications. And I'm going to, again, I should have actually prefaced my credential by saying that you don't need them. Right? You don't need them to understand that you've been told a lot of bullshit and nonsense. It's common sense that keeps us honest. It's been able to practically demonstrate and show things in reality and not show models or equations on bits of paper or invoke visible images as some kind of proof of something. Yeah. And that runs really, really deep, Dale, right? I mean, and we've talked about this so often, but I'm going to repeat myself. If we were all blind, right? If everybody on this planet was blind and nobody had any visual perception, then just think of the mess we'd be in, right? So I think everybody understands that visual perception, i.e. what you see when you open your eyes in the morning, is a huge, huge part of your life, right? It's very difficult to imagine doing it without it. And, the people who are blind, I've just got nothing but admiration for how they get through the day, right? Because, if I think about my own position, I really don't know how I'd manage, Yeah. But anyway, what I want to say there is that visual perception is a partial perception of the whole sense package that we have, right? And it's only by using all of our senses do we have, a grasp on objective reality. What we don't have a grasp on fully is how vision and visual perception works, how it connects to the mind. Yeah. And that's the thing that's been absolutely heavily hijacked. And it doesn't matter where it is, whether it's in talking about, optical illusions, whether it's looking at that whole idea of visual perception in sciences, so-called sciences like astronomy or surveying, because all of these things have to do with, measurement by observation, right? You're looking at something and you're trying to deduce what reality or what the nature of reality is. So, what they've managed to do, as far as I'm concerned, is hijack the differentiation and the discernment between physical space and between what we could call optical space, or what we've talked about before, tangibles and visibles, right? And when I talk about space, then I really do mean space. In physical space, we talk about the separation between objects and how to measure that separation. And in visible space, all you have is visible angles of things, right? Yeah. And it's a completely different world, and it's described by a completely different geometry, even though these two spaces have common spatial features, right? Because our eye is in a body that is in a physical world. So we do share certain spatial properties, but this separation of visible and physical world is what everybody is not catching on to. It's what science has missed. And so when they can tell you that, I'm seeing a wee light in the sky, and that means it's a physical ball, then what they're doing there is absolutely confusing these two different geometric worlds, right? And they're basically trying to push onto us what we see visibly and trying to tell us that it's real. Yeah. And it goes so deep in mathematical sciences, and physics and in maths, that separation between the visible and the physical world is not properly discerned. You will not find any books that talk about it. You will not find any mathematical papers that discuss it. Now, Dale, I mean, for all of us, if it's the most important sense organ we have, and its visual perception is arguably the most important thing in our whole lived life, from waking to sleeping, right? At least, right? Then why is it not being discussed? Why is it not being properly differentiated in all the sciences? Yeah. Why does nobody talk about it? Why is it just relegated to some medical, subdomain of opticians who talk about your eye? No, what I'm talking about is not the physiological fact that it's a little sphere. Yeah. It is. But what I'm talking about is the description, the geometrical description of the visible world.
Yeah.
And that does not get talked about. It gets confused with the physical world. And that's where they can play us all off against each other.
And again, and anybody coming from the globe side who's invoking a visible phenomena will always avoid the aspect of the eye and the mechanics of how it's actually working. They can never account for it fully in their proposed proofs because they don't even have that understanding. And if they do have the understanding, they're deliberately, avoiding it and leaving it out of the discussion because it's a huge relevant factor. How are we actually perceiving the world through these spherical balls that we have in our skulls? I mean, you can't just invoke, I see something, therefore I'm going to now attribute that to this proposed model that I have a bias for. That's zealotry, that is intellectual dishonesty. They cannot account for what is actually going on, and you will never see them invoking it or bringing it into any other proofs. And again, they only have visible phenomena that Gav has pointed out that's been hijacked.
Yep, no, absolutely. And I mean, you can see them when they start to play on all these visible phenomena and they don't do that differentiation, whether it's mathematically or physically or in optics or in physiology. Why is nobody talking about it there? Why?
Yeah.
Why is... I keep coming back to it. I won't find anything in mathematics. I'll hear them talking about curved space-time, right?
Yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, that is just, again, another confusion about how the visible world works. And as I say, I don't want to reduce the conversation to just how our eye works. I'm talking about how we describe the position of objects in our visual field, because that's the geometry of position that's been hijacked and separated. In mathematics and in physics, they talk about the geometry of motion. So the physics of motion has been separated from the physics or from the mathematics of position. And that's how they can tell us fairy stories, right?
Yeah.
In mathematical models and languages. And what they're actually doing, Dale, when they talk about curved space-time or celestial spheres and any of those things, is that it really is just a hidden way of telling us how the eye works, except they're not telling us that.
Yeah.
And you'll see them making mockeries and, all this symbolism with, one eyes and, all the stuff that you see all the time. And I think it really does come down to that they're hijacking all the mathematics and the physics behind how the eye works and telling us fairy stories in place of that.
Exactly.
And I, for one, I've got a whole wealth of research there that I'm going to be, putting online pretty soon that will show exactly how these mathematical equations have been manipulated. And it will also show that it's not a question of us fighting with the Globers about some mathematical equation. It's actually about just looking at how these things are defined in terms of their axioms, their presuppositions, the common notions that we have, the first principles.
Yeah.
And if you reword them and reinterpret them, then you can use all the mathematics of the globe. You just don't have to attach yourself to the belief or the narrative that they're telling you about it.
Yeah.
It has everything to do with visual space and nothing to do with physical space balls zipping through a fucking absurd vacuum.
Exactly.
I mean, it's drivel, absolute drivel,
exactly.
right?
It is absolute drivel, Gav. You're spot on. And we can talk about a couple of examples of that again. Talking about ships going over the curve of the horizon, and you have to understand that the geometry of a sphere is a physical, definite thing that doesn't change. So you've got these people telling you that things are going over the curve of an earth. Yet, as you elevate up, you still have the same effect. You still have the floor rising in front of you. You're never tilting your head downwards to look at an ever increasing slope of horizon going away from you in front of you. It's continually appearing straight in front of you, regardless of your altitude. Okay,
yep.
So again, it's showing you that they're hijacking the visible world and trying to superimpose it as some sort of three-dimensional, tangible reality. If it was the case, it would be fixed. So in the example of a ship going over the curve, that is where the curvature is. It's an increasing slope going downwards. As you then elevate from that point, you would be angling downwards to look further and further down the sloping away earth beneath your feet. It's preposterous. It's no reality.
No. And I mean, spherical geometry is just one of these things that, it's been around for a long time. We've talked about Euclid before, Dale, and the fact that it's held to be true and it's demonstrably true, right? Because we use it in every single practical construction and engineering for the last 1,000 years. And non-Euclidean geometry, so the idea of bent and warped, spherical things or hyperbolic things, is basically just two different geometries that are on either side of the planar one that's in the middle.
Yeah.
And they can basically tell stories about these things. They can play with their mathematical models, but it has nothing to do with the reality of the fact that, we are on a level plane and we use Euclidean geometry in everything we do.
Yeah.
And the fact that, our eyes are spherical allows us to think that, we see things more or less planar, but it's only approximately true because of the fact that you can't see the inside curve. You can't see the intrinsic curvature of your own eye, right? And that word intrinsic curvature is also the mathematical definition by Gauss and Riemann as to how you describe curved surfaces, right? Yeah. Like what they tell us the Earth is. So when I look closely at all these words, when I look closely at the definitions, they're actually just telling us a story about the visible world and the geometry of visible space. Yeah. That's all they're doing. It's that simple, guys. Exactly. And mathematicians can't see it either. I didn't see it, right? I studied the fucking stuff, and I didn't see the differentiation between the physical world or the tangible world and the visible world or the optical world. And if you don't make that separation, if you don't see that discernment, then all your formulas are just going to be mixed up. You're going to be talking as if it was a real thing, even though you really should be pointing out that we're talking about the visible world. And that counts for astronomy, for navigation, for surveying, for perspective. Perspective's just one part of this differentiation between the physical and the visible world. I see a lot of guys getting, caught up and trying to prove perspective, and I've heard all kinds of, funny terminologies about it. But that's just a small part of the big deception or the big confusion between physical space and visible space, Dale.
Yeah.
We need to break it down. People need to see it for what it is. Academia needs to understand the difference and start differentiating when they're talking about things and differentiating properly. What is just a visible image that has to do with the way your eye works and how light interacts with it and how your mind then shows you these objects, if that's the correct way to say it, show you it. But they present themselves to us in some weird way that I don't understand how it happens, right? But what we can do is know that light is hitting the back of your retina and it is leaving a material impression on the back of your retina. So, whether you're looking through an astronomical telescope, a surveying instrument, all these things have to do with how that works. Yeah. So if nobody's talking about it, Dale, then your alarm bell should be going off, right?
Exactly.
And mine are. Yeah. And they have been for years. So.
And just to add in, you're talking about the non-Euclidean aspects. These things came at a much later date. The planar principles were being utilised in practical everyday existence way before, and the Euclidean plane principles still are being used in everyday existence, but the non-Euclidean aspects came at a much later date.
Yep.
So again,
1700s, I think.
So it's very, very simple. Coupled with the substance known as water. I could get into so many other aspects, and the geometric assumption, the foundation that we assume to be true, that we construct everything else from as a level plane. Now, if that's what's being utilised in everyday practical reality, that debunks this image that you're seeing. I don't really like the word debunks, but disproves, shows you that there's an obvious deception going on about this image that's being presented to you, about the ground beneath your feet.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Again,
it's that.
If it's getting too complex and too complicated and contradictory and all that kind of stuff, you're dealing with a lie. If it's real, it's very simple. Practically show it.
Exactly, Dale. Yep, absolutely. And everything too complicated. The deception is pretty simple. They've managed to use sophisticated words. They understand the human mind better than we do ourselves, and that's why it's important that people dig into it.
Yeah.
And they've hijacked the physical and the visible worlds, right? And not properly differentiated so that they can cross between the two and tell us stories. Mathematical spheres are the same as real space balls.
Well,
bullshit. Bullshit, people. Right?
A perfect example is a thing known as the celestial sphere. It's a great example of what's actually been done. The celestial sphere is an imaginary concept that places the observer in the centre point of a sphere. But the central point of that sphere is cut by a level plane through the middle. So that from the central point of this apparent sphere, that each individual, as we walk about, it appears that we are inside our own little, sphere or dome, if you like. Now, if you look at the depictions of this, they're actually showing you it. So that again, you can see them hijacking an individual's perspective of how they see the planar world, and then incorporated it into a mathematical concept, so that, anybody can go outside right now and have a look, that the floor rises up, the sky comes downwards, and if you've got something in your peripheral, looking down a corridor, the walls will appear to converge. But if we take that away and we only have the floor and the sky, it looks to us from our perspective that we're standing inside a little sphere, a little dome. That's just a property of the eye, how the eye is actually perceiving the world. But they're trying to hijack that and tell you that it's an actual real thing. It's not a tangible real thing. They even tell you in their description it's an imaginary concept based on visual perception, not the tangible, measurable world.
Yeah. And I mean, every astronomical observation or observation made of a luminary, of a light in the sky, to determine, for example, your own position on Earth, it all has to do with a field observation, Dale. Yeah. You actually need to go out with a measurement and make that angle measurement, right? Yeah. The one with either with a sextant, with a planar instrument, or with a cross staff. There's been lots of instruments over the years. And you have to go out and you have to make a field observation. So anybody telling you that it has nothing to do with visual perception is a fucking liar, right? End of story. Yeah. And if they're not correctly differentiating and telling you how your visual perception works, and not telling you what the geometry of visible space is, namely spherical and not planar, right? There is a difference, because the visual world is only a two-dimensional world. You cannot perceive the outward distance of something, right? A 2-inch coin is the same as, same size as the sun if I hold it at arm's length, right? Yeah. So I cannot tell the size of real objects, right? And the real distance. It's not possible with our eyes, right? No. So we get that gets hijacked. They can tell us stories that it's 93 million miles away, but what they're not telling you properly and what they're not educating you is that it's the position of things in your visual field that count. And that's where the mathematics kicks in, where they start to make descriptions of it, where they have the equations and axioms and definitions, but it's all just a model, They're not telling us that it all has to do with how your visual perception works.
Exactly. Yep. And you brought up the sextant there. Even the sextant's showing you it's two straight line angles, and it's this angle that they're accounting for. The outer curve part represents the outer curve of your eye, and you're taking the angle from the arc of the measurement to the position of an apparent object. So they're showing you, and again the two straight lines are that straight lines are no curved lines. It's only the outward curve that they're utilising in regards to something like a sextant. But even a sextant is a plain geometric tool because it's calibrated to the level. You have to line it up to the horizontal, the level plane beneath your feet, so that you can get a gauge for the angle of an apparent object above your head.
Yep. Absolutely. And you can see it in all the other things too. Like, if we take aeroplane travel, even, and you look at the words like plane, basically these things are bouncing, like a stone across the water on air, right? And they're being propelled from behind you, so that they can manage that. And if you think then about the cockpit, right? Yeah. It's like a wee eye. It's like the eye of a bird, right? And there's wee guys sitting in there with instruments, and they're all bleeping, and they're being told they're on a fucking ball, right? Yeah. But anybody, any pilot who actually thinks he's going upside down on a fucking ball, Dale, needs his license taken away from him, right? Because it's absolutely preposterous. Every pilot knows that he goes up, he stays on the fucking level, and then he lands again, and nothing has moved underneath him.
But if you go to the base of these, you go to the engineering of an aircraft, the instrumentation of an aircraft, the diagrams and the tracking instruments that are used, the angle of approach, the angle of attack, from takeoff to landing to level, straight and level flight in the air. Look at their diagrams again. They're using a Cartesian box, grid, which is a horizontal and a vertical, and they can calculate. They know the position of things based from the level and its altitude, and that's it's in everything. Go and look at the base aspects of these things. They're showing you all the diagrams, everything. You will never see these things presented to you on a curved surface. It's always on a plane surface.
Yep. And generally speaking, you only need to read the introduction or look at chapter 1, where they'll say things like, we assume the Earth to be stationary and flat in the rest of this book, right? Yep. So, I mean, it speaks for itself, in all these things. And, anybody who just thinks that because there's been mathematical instruments, and I use the word instruments intentionally, because if I come up with a mathematical formula and an equation or a method, I can call that a mathematical instrument, right? And what I then do is I go away and build a real physical instrument that measures what my mathematics tells me to measure, right? So all these people sitting in little cubicles looking at screens that are basically mathematical instruments, that's not reality.
No.
That's not reality. No. I mean, people are being fed that data and information. And I'm not saying, and this, I just want to be very clear on this, I'm not saying that these models don't work. They do work. And that's why the Globers can say, only spherical mathematics, shows that it's real. But that's not true. It's not just spherical mathematics that shows it, because if you look at the mathematics, you can change the axioms and the words and the definitions, and the whole thing changes into a planar surface, right? At the snap of a finger, right? So it's just a question of what we believe, not a question of that they're right or that that's real what they're telling us.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
And even their depictions, they're showing you cartoon images of spheres. They're using computer model programs to depict a sphere. Now, the base geometry even of the computer program, the thing that they're using again is a planar, instrument. They're using the very same principles of a horizontal and a vertical so that they can create some geometry in between those 2 points. And that's the depictions that they're showing you. Even the computer program is planar. It's no spherical geometry or non-Euclidean geometry. It's plane principles again.
Yep.
So because they can create wee spheres within their programs, they think again that it's got some sort of validity when it doesn't. They have to go to the root, the actual base of what they're actually working from. What's the assumptions that are being made? That tells you everything.
Yep. No, absolutely. As I say, it really is simple. It's if I wanted to bring it down to 3 points, it's this fact that they're using words, right? Yeah. Very sophisticated. They're not teaching us how the trivium is. We're getting mixed up with grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and we don't really differentiate.
Yeah.
The second thing is we don't understand our minds very well, right?
Yeah.
We don't understand the psychology of how we can manipulate it, and that includes visual perception, because that has to do with the physiology of how we see things. And the other thing is this whole hijacking of mathematical sciences and not differentiating between physical, real-world things and the world of visibles or the geometry of visibles.
And also,
these 3 things, I think, are the
what I would add into that, and what's being utilised a lot, is the lack, as you say, it's an aspect of no understanding the mind, and again the separation of what is subjective and objective, and they're playing on these aspects because people are prone to go with emotional impulse, to stand by a bias, to go with numbers, to anything that will reaffirm and confirm their already pre-existing bias. People will jump to that. So what you get the majority of the time from people is an opinion, something that's coming from a subjective point of view. That's where it's being projected out from. We're not interested in people's subjective desires, wishes, beliefs, insecurities, needs for certainty. We're talking about the objective world and how we understand the objective world. And again, you have to be able to separate your subjective interpretation and your subjective wiring, and you really need to understand that and no bring it to the table in regards to this discussion, because that's being played upon. People's ignorance, people's apathy, people's lack of understanding, and they're being swayed by these sophists, these agents of propaganda, who are just trying to perpetuate and reaffirm that existing bias of belief that people are holding, which is the sphere, the nonsensical, conceptual, idiocy that is the heliocentric globe model,
Yeah. And on top of that, Dale, I'd just add that, that we've been brainwashed into this cult of the personality.
Yeah.
As you say, believing what other people have said, giving away the right to judge for yourself to some higher authority that either has a white coat, some credentials, a title before his name. Yeah. And people, need to realize that they are the actual scientists, and they shouldn't be buying into some guy selling himself better than you might be doing, or I might be doing, or anybody, right? Yeah. But these people don't know what they're talking about. They're generally in it to make money, for power, for narcissistic, self-serving reasons, right? Yeah. And we, unfortunately, are sometimes in a mindset of looking up to these people and wishing we were them and all that kind of crap, right? Yeah. And people need to stay away from that,
Exactly.
And that, for me, is part of this whole, understanding the operations of your mind and, how to stop certain bad habits, let's call it, right? Yeah. And even if it's a lifetime of bad habits, snap out of it, people, right? Think for yourselves, think critically, and don't let anybody judge for you.
Yeah, again, it's not going to go away. People like us are not going to go away. And again, we're going to, ask that anybody who's claiming that they're interested in the objective world and what is objectively true, is that they engage in this topic of discussion with honesty, with integrity, openness, and that they don't enter into the realms of ridicule and propaganda, because it's rife amongst anybody who questions this particular subject. And you'll see an endless amounts of people making propaganda, hit piece, cult of personality, idol worship, playing on all these subjective aspects. So we are asking people to engage with us at that level. We have no preference for what the earth actually is. We're only interested in what the actual truths are, and highlighting the avenues or the areas that we know are questionable, and seeing if we can have honest discussion with that. So we've got nothing to protect other than our own integrity and our own pursuit of understanding. And I'm not interested in, any models or projections about what people perceive or think that the earth might be. I have no bias whatsoever. I didn't have a choice in whether I wanted to believe in the globe or not. It simply arrived on my lap, and I had an honest look at it and found that there was no way I could justify, maintaining the belief that where I lived was actually a globe. So, people will try and portray us as being the cult. People will try and portray us as being crazies or whatever. We're the people who have been intellectually honest enough and strong enough to address our own perceptions and to eradicate the falsities that we've held to be true. That should be a sign to anybody about who is who. I'm not here selling a product. Gav's not got a product to offer. There's nothing in this for us to make other than to further our understanding of the reality that we exist in. And we encourage you and anybody else that comes across this to partake in that and to remove your attention from all the fluff.
Yep. Yeah, no, as far as I'm concerned, and I've said this before as well, one of the reasons I come to your platform and sit here and talk with you is because people need to realize that it doesn't matter from what walk of life you are, right? Whether you've got tattoos and you swear, or whether you've got a better accent, a posh accent, or whatever you want to fucking call, right? It doesn't matter. We're all the same, and we should all be looking at that exactly as you said, objectively, neutrally, right, without any bias. Yeah, exactly. And that's a really important part that people. And I'm not interested in speaking to anybody who doesn't come with that. No. I've got no donkey in this race, or horse in this race, or dog, or whatever they call it. Yeah. Right. All I want to understand before I fucking snuff it is better where the hell I am. I know I'm being deceived, Dale. I know things are not the way they're being told. I know it's not true. Yeah. I feel sorry for, my father and other family members who are dead and who didn't have a chance to fully realize where the fuck they are and realize that they're being deceived even. Yeah. So, I feel myself to be in a time right now where it's important that, people do stand up and make it stop. Exactly. It has to stop, exactly. Right? It can't go on like this for generations to come. I don't want to see my kids go through it. So, that's the only reason I'm fucking doing this.
And again, part of the drive and the reason for me is exactly just as some of the things that Gav has touched on here. And it's another aspect of what I've offered up here on my journey. If I do not know where I am and what the full dimensions are, if I have a false perception of where I am and what this place actually is, then the things that I call a life my interactions, my pursuits, my career, my hobbies, the narratives that I tell myself, my philosophies about my existence.
What do they really mean?
They mean nothing. They're delusions. Yeah. They are fairy tales that I'm trying to clutch onto and grasp onto and try and make true or make sense of my reality. That it's a huge importance for not only me but generations to come, as Gav has said, and for me to bring some justice to the people that have went before us, who lived a life of delusion, living in a false bubble, never really knowing or understanding what they were a part of, where they actually were. So it's hugely relevant and hugely important. There's a whole narrative that goes with people that say, what difference does it make? Well, I have to point to you and say, well, if you're asking that question and even asserting what difference does it make, I have to look at you as someone who is willfully ignorant, very, very stupid, because it's massively important. Everything that we do, everything that we partake in is based on that. Whether we actually believe we're hairless monkeys on a globe, that then dictates the type of behaviour I may partake in, or whether I don't really fully understand it and know it, but I'm taking it at a distance. It's still influencing how I may behave and how I view the world and my interactions with everybody else in the world. It's massively important. You need the foundations of anything to be solid in order to have a solid structure. So people need to ask that question.
Yeah, I mean, and there are people, Dale, or there seems to be, that can go through life and take things on faith and believe in some religious deity and an afterlife and everything's going to be honey, sweet and roses, I can't do that, I really can't. I've got to look at my objective reality. I've got to find out where I am, what I'm doing here and what this is all about, at least as good as I can. And I'm not going to give up until the last breath I take, right?
Exactly.
But I know there are other people who seem to be able to say, oh, what does it matter and all that. I could slap them, to be honest. I mean, obviously I don't, but exactly. I find that an infuriating, attitude to take. Yeah, exactly. Because as you say, Dale, it does make a huge difference. If I think I'm a hairless monkey with no rhyme or reason zipping through the vacuum, as you say, right? Yep. Then that's going to define who I am, right? It's going to define the way I think. It's going to make me narcissistic, self-serving, probably conceited, I'm going to get on and egoistic in my own wee world, and we can see the mess we're in, right?
You can head right into nihilism. I mean, we don't have any moral compass. We have nothing to base any of the laws that are, or the structure that we try and impose on society. These things are founded upon absolutely nothing. If you really, really believe in that narrative, you have no leg to stand on. I can't take you as rational, sensible, sane, nothing. And, as far as I'm concerned, nihilism is fair game. Why do we even have laws in the first place? Where are these people getting these concepts and ideas of law and justice and structure and ethics and morality? Where does it all come from if we are, in the endless void that came from nowhere and no rhyme or reason or nothing? Again, take a look at the world, take a look at the dysfunction, take a look at the obvious imbalance that's going on, and then come back and tell me that it doesn't matter about these stories that are being pushed and perpetuated about our existence, who we are and where we are, because they play a huge role.
Yeah. No, definitely. That's when I think again about the fact that the people who believe in science still, right, but refuse to acknowledge that they're actually taking things on faith, then I really do find a religious person more honest. At least he says and agrees that he's taking things on faith, right? So I can live with that one. I'd still rather he suspended all that and came back to the same level I'm at, right? And said, let's look at the objective world first and figure out where the fuck we are before we start, metaphysically speculating about what it all could be about. But at least they're honest, because they'll say to you, well, I believe in faith and, I really believe that. Whereas these people who believe in the globe tale, they won't even admit that basically all they have is a faith, right? Exactly. A faith in an authoritative, scientific narrative. And I'm not knocking all science. I'm particularly talking about cosmology and astronomy those kind of things.
It's the aspects that try and answer the existential questions, Gav, as I was pointing at the beginning of this.
Exactly.
Science for me simply means exploration. Now, that exploration means moving from one moment to the next, you know, from one aspect to the other, and finding what we find purely for what it is, without ever trying to invoke some narrative to attach to that, you know, and answer the existential questions. That's in the realms of religion, and you have to realise and recognise that that's what's went on with this guise of science, this umbrella of science and the way they've professed it to people, because that's what they've done. They've tried to give you a meaning to your life. That's no scientific, that's no exploration, that's religion. And it's very, very obvious to see.
Yeah. And then you have the unthinking clones who will just come out and repeat that stuff and pretend they actually know what's been said without maybe ever having really looked into it, you know, really defending this, you know, zealously, Dale, right? Defending this religion online as well as offline. Although when they're offline, you can usually, you know, get a rapport with people and point them out to the absurdities of the way that they're thinking and get them to question their own beliefs, you know, Socratically. But online, it's a total disaster. Trying to engage with these people is you know, like,
even in reality, when you engage with people, you see a huge aspect of the Dunning-Kruger effect encompassed by Stockholm Syndrome. You know, just as Gav has just pointed out, these people, you know, are regurgitating these mantras, buzzwords and phrases that they don't really fully understand. They don't have a proper grasp on what it is they're actually saying. And again, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. You know, this is where we have to look at aspects of the education system. What's actually going on? Because it's laced all the way through right to nursery school, where they're imposing these narratives and these phrases and words that people are adopting, and they don't have an actual grasp. The reason that they don't have an actual grasp is because it's simply language. It's not things that are based on an objective practicality. Because if it was these things were practical, people would have a real grasp. There would be no Dunning-Kruger effect of mindless morons. And I'm talking about people from, you know, the layman to the academic, you know, realms, where I have interviewed these people, and I'm seeing the Dunning-Kruger effect all the way through across the board. It's not exactly just one particular avenue, you know?
Yep. This affects everybody. I mean, that's the thing, right? It doesn't matter what your job profession is, what your status in life, how much money you earn. None of that matters, right? Because we are actually all the same, with the same faculties of you know, natural constitution, right? To be able to do these things. So, yeah, I mean, I've said it myself. I was conned, Del, right? I was totally taken in. I was spouting nonsense, believing in, you know, all the nonsense that I was told. And you know, basically being a religious zealot, you know, and you know, so it can happen to anybody. And as you say, it doesn't matter who you're talking to, the man in the street or the man in a lecture hall. You know, they've both got the same levels of cognitive dissonance, and that needs to stop.
The only reason that,
to be honest, I find the guy in the street easier to convince. The academic has too much invested, generally speaking, Dale.
Exactly. And again, you know, I don't pander to any of these imaginary avenues and structures of stature and hierarchy. You know, if you're a man, you're a man, you're a woman, you're a woman. If you're a sentient being and you want to engage with me and you want to, you know, make claims to me, you must be able to practically show me that. I don't care what walk of life and how sophisticated you think you are, it makes no difference to me.
Yeah.
And again, science, just to reiterate it, for me simply means exploration. And that belongs to every single person as an individual. Nobody has ownership over that to be able to take it into the realms of private institutions and hierarchy and stature. That again, you're dealing with manipulation there when you start to look at that. And it's fallacious logic and reasoning on your part if you continually invoke the sway of consensus or authority or stature or whatever you think, you know, somehow lends credence to your pre-existing bias. I don't care for any of that. I'm just going to point at it and I'm going to call it out for exactly what it is. I consider it mental illness and I'm going to keep showing it and highlighting it. I don't care if it offends you. That's just tough because it's the truth of the matter. And you're dealing with people here who have the right to say it because we went through it. We're sitting here on the other side saying, listen, we believed this stuff. We took it for granted. We addressed it. We looked at it. We have no, you know, horse in the race, as Gav said. There's no bias coming from us. We're not going to make any money or anything to gain out of this other than to establish the objective facts.
Yep. And that's a good point you brought up, Del. I mean, maybe you've said this already about mathematics being a language, you know. when you get, you know, indoctrinated or taught, you know, a certain subject, then you have to learn the terms that are used, the meanings of the words that are used, the equations, the formulas. So you need to learn all these things to be in the club, right? To be able to be part of that, you know, little community of people who have that knowledge, and everybody else would seem to be excluded. You know, you're either too daft, you're too stupid, it's too complicated for you.
Yeah.
But don't listen to that. It's fucking nonsense, right? Because, you know, again, we're all the same. We all have the same scientific capabilities. And as you say, it's about exploring the natural world and exploring the inside of our head still. Exactly. Yeah. Both of these things, you know, nobody's any better than anybody else. Yeah. No. And I'm the same as you. They can all go and fuck themselves with their degrees. I'll call a spade, yeah. Yeah. You know, any day of the week.
Exactly. You don't need an intellectual superiority, you know, to start telling me that water behaves in some contrary manner to what my experience tells me, you know, and then tell me that I just don't understand. That's just absurd and a lie, you know, and I don't take kindly to these manipulative liars. I'm passionate about this, and I have a fuck you attitude, and people may see that, but again, I have to bring you back to, don't be passing judgment on my mannerisms or Gav's mannerisms. It's by the by. It means absolutely nothing. You deal with the content, you deal with the subject in question, which is the validity of this heliocentric globe model. And as far as we're concerned, it has nothing. It has no practicality, nothing demonstrable, nothing measurable. It has nothing. It does not exist. It only exists in your imagination and on a TV screen. That's it.
And in mathematical models. Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is now taken to be the wonderful new religion, and it's supposed to be reality. No, it's just a descriptor of certain natural phenomena by man, made by men, possibly with their own agendas, or possibly just ignorant to other things like the visible world and the differentiation between the two. And again, I'll keep coming back to Dale. I don't think there's a worldwide conspiracy of people or scientists out there all trying to do something. No. They are just as conned as we were. That's the problem.
Exactly.
Not that they're all against us.
Exactly.
The only people you need to be wary of are these online clowns who are trying to defend it because they can see the balls burst. They can see people are seeing through the bullshit. They're the only ones. Everybody else is just, in honest confusion, if you ask me.
And that's exactly what it is. It's the confusion, because you would have to then be saying that you and I, for the years that we believed in it, were lying, actively lying, and it's just not the case. It's not always how it has to work. It's another defence mechanism of this religious narrative trying to maintain its stature by putting that out there, idiotic statements of everybody would have to be in on it. Utter nonsense, Just think about it reasonably and rationally, it doesn't take much for people to be in confusion and misunderstanding. We're perfect examples of that. And there's many, many other people who are online and in reality who have went through the same walk, so.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to also make that differentiation between the engineerable, constructible part of things, Dale, and the let's call it the more mathematical modeling part that's divorced from that real practical demonstrable. There's a concept in mathematics called imaginary numbers, right? Yeah. Maybe people have heard of them. I'm not going to get into too deeply, but one of the nice little tricks that it does is if you multiply two imaginary numbers, a real number can come out the other side, right? Now that probably sounds preposterous to most people, right? Mm-hmm. But mathematically it's true. So that allows something to be engineerable and real. An engineer will look at that real, equation, the real solution of the equation and the real number and go away and do something with it. Whereas the mathematicians will maybe, imagine things to do with these imaginary numbers, right? Yeah. And build models and constructs that have nothing to do with engineerable reality. Yeah. So it's just an example of how mathematics can be used to be perfectly workable in the modern world, but at the same time also be used to tell a bunch of nonsense. And people really need to differentiate that.
Exactly.
And I'm going to be doing quite a few videos in the next, just to make that very clear to people how that actually works. Excellent. It's not difficult, people. No. Honestly, it sounds sometimes as if it is, but the con is really easy.
Yeah, and for people, it may be difficult for people to pursue the avenues of actually uncovering where the tricks of the mathematics have came, Gav, but it's very, very simple for people to commit
big
to
picture, right?
to commit to their own being, to say something simple like, you know how water behaves, you know it doesn't have the ability to bend and conform around the exterior of shapes and objects. You know this through your own walk of life, through your own direct experience of everyday reality, from the minute you open your eyes to the minute you go to your bed. You know these things. You know, it may be difficult in a particular avenue of expertise, like Gav's talking about uncovering the more complicated aspects of mathematics. But for the layman and the onlooker, you don't have to involve yourself in that. You can, and I would encourage anybody to try and understand as much as they possibly can. But for right now, you can take things on your own discernment, understand reality for yourself and how you experience it. Like, you wake up, it's no moving, you're no spinning, you know, you see things plainer, you see a flat horizontal line when you look at the horizon. You know these things, you know.
Yep.
You know that pressured gas, you know, requires containment. You know that in a vacuous, empty space, you would need some sort of containment. You don't need sophisticated language and a degree for 10 years to understand the simplicity of your everyday practical reality. That's where the key aspect of these things are. If you're getting bogged in with complicated stuff, you need to remove your attention from it. There may be a justifiable avenue, like something Gav's talking about, but that's not for everybody. But there is a level that everybody can get on board with, and it's in this practical realm of the substances that we can demonstrate and show each other practically. And again, I'm going to keep hammering this because it's a huge aspect. You know, the simplicity again of the geometry that we assume and we apply. The fact that the globe cannot be modelled in any real way, shape or form, it cannot be scaled, it cannot be demonstrated in a practical way. You know, give me anything in reality that's actually real that I cannot scale and show you in a demonstration. There is nothing. But yet when it comes to this all-encompassing bigger picture of this globe, all of a sudden you're going to get excuses and reasons for why that can't be the case. It's utter bullshit. If something's real, show it practically, demonstrate it, scale it, model it, show us it. It can't be done.
Yep, and I just want to reiterate that point too. So I fully understand that some of the things I'm talking about is not going to appeal to people, Dale.
Yep.
But you know what you've said is exactly right. People can see that for themselves in a practical world. You know, everybody, you know, when they open their eyes, they can see a straight horizon, right?
Yep.
They can understand the concept of a great circle that goes around them. Right? They can understand that their ears are responsible for making them understand whether they're on a level equilibrium or not. Yeah. Right? They know they can't see around corners, so light can't bend. Yeah. Right? So all these, you know, that might sound like difficult mathematical, physical concepts. They aren't. If you look at your own constitution and your own body and how you function and live life, then you'll understand what's being said. Yeah. Right? You don't need to know the equations, is what I'm trying to out. You know, it really is that simple.
It's exactly it. You know, as you say, you know, through your vision and your balance, it's you have an internal gyroscope, again, a planar instrument, and your whole constitution is built on that. You know your direction, up, down, left, right, every other possible direction from the level. Always that equilibrium, that horizontal straight line. That's what you know. Okay? Yep. So it's, you know, your constitution, your experience is telling you. It's just that people are in so much confusion because of this military device that you call the TV and the images that are being portrayed to you. That's where the confusion comes in. It's so simple. If you take away the TV, and TV never existed, and I went to anybody and tried to tell them they were on a wobbling, rotund, spherical ball rock, zipping through a vacuum at millions of miles per hour, they would fucking laugh at you. Okay? Probably to the point of fucking physically assaulting you for daring to try and come and insult their intelligence.
Well, I mean, what they should be doing is taking care of you, putting you in a hospital, making sure that you have solace and good friends around you, you know, maybe some medication to keep you a bit quiet, because if anybody still believes all that nonsense there, then, you know, as far as I'm concerned, they need globe care, you know, Globama care, is what they need. That's what we should start an initiative for these poor fuckers that still believe that they're on a globe, right? And I don't know, we should call it Globama care, I think, you know, just get it out there, you know, whatever you need, people just, you know, get some direct realist counseling, right? You know, get back out into lived life, you know, switch off the TV. There's lots of things that they can do to actually, you know, be back in as functioning members of society.
Exactly.
But the fact that people still believe that nonsense after 4 years of this, they'll just, you know, beats me.
Exactly. But again, Gav, I just want to keep hammering it. It's down to this device, this military device that we have in our living rooms called the TV.
Yeah.
If you remove that and that had never been there, we wouldn't be having this problem. The spherical ball model would never have got off the ground. It would have just been laughed at and ridiculed the way it should be. They talk about flat earthers and people like us that it's all ridicule and it's ridiculous. When it's the opposite is really true. It's a projection on their part, because what they're offering is absolutely absurd, total nonsensical gibberish coming from mentally unstable fucking, retards, as far as I'm concerned. But again, I'm allowed to say that because I was one of these people.
Me too. And as I say, I have full sympathy and empathy with people who are still in there. Yeah. But, people, they really need to snap out of it. I mean, it's gone on too long now. People who come to this, and I hope they come to, as we've said many a time, Dale, to quality information, right? Yeah. It's not about the quantity anymore. It's about making sure people grasp the proper things that they need to be looking at and not get confused by all the bullshit that's out there. Yeah. So, but anybody who still hasn't got it, I don't know what to do anymore with them, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
well, my plan is everything that we're speaking about, I want to categorise it, make it concise, and break everything down into small chunks. From the language aspects right into the dynamics and the details of what the globe is and how it's been done. And obviously, Gav's got work there, and that we're just going to compile and put it all together. So it's all going to get broken down into a proper series that's hopefully easy to digest for people, so that anybody that's coming across this that wants to share it with family and friends, it's easily digestible. As I keep saying, it's so difficult to try and condense it all into some. Again, it's the attention span of people. They're looking for quick fix. 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Unfortunately, this is a massive thing. It's complicated and it's complex, to the point where you couldn't condense it into a wee shot. I could quickly just rhyme it off in 3 minutes, but it's not good enough for some people. We need to break it down concisely and show everything properly.
Yeah, so I agree. No, I mean, we've over the years that we've been doing this together, Dale, there's so much content there. I saw you cleaned up the channel and put things there, and I would urge people again to look at some of these videos, because there's a hell of a lot of material already out there. But I do like, we've talked about this, of making it shorter and conciser and like breaking it down so that there's no dubiety about what we're saying, right? Yeah. There's no ambiguity in our words or what we're saying, and hopefully that's good for people who are coming new to this. Yeah.
Exactly. To say, it's just got beyond a joke now. I'm not putting up with the propaganda. I'm not getting dragged into any of these people's games anymore. And I'm going to continually point at it and highlight it and warn other people about what's actually going on. You just have to question the intent and the incentive of some of the content providers that you're seeing online, and ask the questions about what, are they actually addressing the topic of discussion? Are they obfuscating? Are they using propaganda techniques, focusing on characters, personalities, trying to drag it into the realms of subjectivity? The whole thing is awash with that. And, coupled by this whole thing about adopting what flat earth actually means. And I think we need to speak a wee bit about that as well, Gav, obviously, because, there's so much to play here in regards to the propaganda. I'm a realist, again, I'm just a sentient being who was, accepted what was being presented to me. And as I got older, maturer, wiser, and I looked at these things and addressed them, I realised that they're bullshit, obvious bullshit. So part of the wisdom in what life teaches you is that lessons learned is not to jump into assumptions and beliefs from naivety. You have to be intellectually honest at all times and stand firm in your direct realism. So, I understand the globe is bullshit. I can see that the applications and the geometry that's being assumed is a level, and I can state that clearly, that for me the earth is demonstrably a level plane. But how far that reaches, what the walls are, if there is any walls, if it extends infinitely, if it has walls but it has access points, exit points, none of that is known to me. So it's preposterous for our human beings to be adopting some other substitute after realising that the thing that has been put to them is false. So the stance here is exploration internally of our minds, and externally of the physical objective world, and all the aspects in between. We have to overturn every stone that we think is settled and we assume to be hard facts and true, and have a readdressing of the whole aspect to see what really holds up.
Yeah. And you're quite right. You know, people very often attach themselves to some other belief. When you take one away, they look to cling to something else. And I can only urge people not to do that.
Yeah.
It's perfectly okay to stand there and say, I don't know, right? And I don't know it means I don't know where I am. I don't know the dimensions of the world. I'm maybe unsure about how my mind works.
Yeah.
And then get to it, actually, do the work. Do the work yourself, do systematic observation, think about things, reflect honestly about, the way you tick, right?
Yeah.
So do all these things, but don't be scared to do them, because it's actually exciting. It's actually refreshing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to do. It's much better than just believing what some cunt tells you.
Yeah.
So, I can just urge people, don't attach yourself to some other model or belief. Yeah. Do your own hard work. Look into it yourself, and be critical about it, and you'll end up at the same place, Dale, that me and you are at,
exactly.
Right? And that many people are at. So I'm not just saying me and you, but but many people are becoming direct realists, right? Yeah. Understanding that that's the only logical conclusion to arrive at. Yeah,
exactly. And what we're talking about is, as you say, Gav, it's much more exciting. It's much more freeing. The possibilities are there because you've got two options. You can either go with that narrative of pomposity and people telling you that they've figured it all out and the whole of existence is figured out to the point of 14.5 billion years ago. Therefore, there's nothing exciting, there's nothing new for you to discover other than what job are you going to get, what slave wage are you going to accept, what hobby are you going to take to pacify your time while you exist here. Because that's all you're doing is existing. As a cog in a fucking machine, a concept, an idea created by some other man. Or you could be a direct realist, free your mind and get on board with the exciting aspects of real exploration and discovery. Because the possibilities are endless as far as I can see. It's exciting times to be in a place of saying you don't know. But that ground allows you the option of possibility. Whereas if you cut yourself off and become a zealot, you're boxed in. You're under a false illusion of certainty and thinking you've got it all figured out when really you don't. And you're just a joke. You're really a joke at the hands of these people who are smarter than you. And they're laughing at you, and showing you in your face that they're ripping the piss right out you. So that's your choice. Be a willful little fucking ignorant slave, or be a direct realist, stand in your own discernment, grow a set of balls, have a backbone, and stand up and face the reality that you're actually existing in here.
Yep. As you say, get on with it, right? Suck it up and get on with it.
Yeah.
I can understand that people have fear and trepidation about letting go. It's a bit like, being on a tightrope or, letting go of something and, walking across without any support. Yeah. But as soon as you start to reach out for all these other people to help you and a belief to clamor to and some opinion that you need to take, then that's you. You're at the mercy of other people making judgments for you.
Exactly.
So don't do it.
And there's none of us sitting here pushing evil beings and this, that and the other. For one, we do not know the real reasons for why this has been implemented. There could be justifiable reasons on their part or whatever. I'm willing to give anybody the opportunity to come at the table and explain what that actually is. And I don't care what the real reason is. All I care about is establishing what it actually is, what the reasons were for why they thought they had to implement this bullshit, whether it was just for pure selfishness or whether they think they're protecting us or whatever it may be. I don't care about any of that. And I'm not here to chastise or want to hang people in the street and, profess I'm a victim to some evildoers. These are all games of psychological manipulation that are going on, perpetuating the victim abuser type scenario. I don't consider myself a victim of some abuser. I just consider myself as a sentient being who was born into naivety, and as I matured or eradicated that naivety, and I now take responsibility for what I accept and what I take on board and what I contribute to. And that's what I encourage everybody else to do. Don't get caught up in this, I'm a poor victim and somebody has to be oppressed because they're evil and wrongdoers. You don't know the full story. There could be any reason behind all this. So don't jump into it.
No, well said, Dale. Yeah, we don't know the true intent and the true motive necessarily. We can infer certain things, from our own experience, but since we don't know, I'm willing also to listen to a conversation. What I don't like is the angels of Globtardia are coming to scourge the earth from flat earth, not idiots, right? Yeah. Because that portrayal of the facts is definitely not true, right? We know that, what they're telling us is bullshit. So, exactly. And again, I'll say, you can sit knowing the facts, and if a hypothesis contradicts the facts, then you're quite right to refuse it. Yeah. What you can't do is come with a hypothesis that contradicts the facts and put your opinion and say that is true. Yeah. That's just nonsense, Dale. Exactly. Right? That has to stop.
Or show me an image that portrays my reality contrary to what I actually know. Water doesn't bend, but your image is showing me that it does. That's the difference,
Yeah. And again, I'll just believe the angels of Globtardia. The water can now bend. Right?
And again, the Globtardians have a real issue with people like us, because we stand in that ground of honesty and the willingness to understand and resolve, which is why you will see them continually try and lump people like myself, people like Gav, into a false dichotomy of flat earthers. We are no what you would call flat earthers, because we don't know the full dimensions of the earth. We deny the globe, the claim that's being put to us, and we're now in the real exploration and trying to establish what it actually is, and we encourage everybody else that comes across this to join that,
Exactly, yeah. To find out how we were deceived so that it will never happen again, right? So that we can protect ourselves against that kind of deceit again, whether it's in the sciences or in media or in communications or any of these fields, right? Yeah. We need to make sure that we see what's going on, so that we can say stop, the next time they come with another absurd stuff.
Exactly.
So that's massively important as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah. Yeah, I know we're just repeating ourselves sometimes, but I think it just has to be said again and again and again. And I really, again, when I think about it, nothing can actually beat common sense.
No.
I mean, all the scientific theories and models, at the end of the day, there's no way it can actually win over common sense, because common sense doesn't, how should I say, obey their rules, right?
No.
Common sense is something we all have, as you say, practical, demonstrable. We know we need it in lived life to survive, So anything that refutes that contradicts that, has to be a lie, right? I mean, it's that simple, exactly. Right? If we stick to common sense, and we can't be dishonest with each other. That's the where it needs to come back. And I've said this a million times. We need to audit the whole of science and to see whether it fits those common sense principles. And if it doesn't, then somebody needs to go away and fucking look at it and come back with a better suggestion, because I'm not accepting it.
Exactly.
That's simple.
And we should be free to do that. Again, just pointing back to the propaganda and the obvious push to try and suppress people like us and ridicule the stance that we're coming from, which is, absolutely preposterous. Again, because we don't have any agenda other than what's the actual truth. So that should be a wake-up call for anybody. The fact that they can't demonstrate any aspect of this globe thing, and the fact that real honest people like us are being met by, total nonsensical ridicule, propaganda, left, right and centre. I mean, go and troll on the internet and look at these characters who just focus purely on, personality, or people like us, and trying places in misrepresentation, just to try and sway the onlooker, who may have an inquisitive aspect to them that would be enough just to put them off, So it takes a wee bit of strength not to listen to hearsay and bullshit, and actually, pay attention to the content that's on offer. Okay? Because you're not going to see us on here making hit piece videos and trying to, ridicule and slander globe proponents, although, we may partake in that sometimes, but it's just because these people are absurd. They're offering up absurdities and trying to confuse people and keep people in bewilderment, and I don't take too kindly to that.
No, me neither, yeah. And I think it's okay to headbutt them online sometimes, Dale, and to show that, passion, as you very well do, and pull them up, basically, stop the schoolyard bully, right?
Exactly.
Who thinks he can push people around, because, there's no way they're going to manage that with me, and certainly not with you either. So,
no.
And that all people need to stand up to that, And one of the things that I find, so pathetic really is that people are still conned by, what I would call these personas. They institute so many of these different types of people, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to name names. Everybody knows the channels I'm probably talking about. And you're supposed to get sucked into that persona a little bit, so you'll maybe have some kind of, smugly arrogant, quiet talking, pseudo intellectual person coming along. And, he's maybe going to have a wee channel, put up videos for approximately 6 weeks or 2 months, and then he's going to disappear. Yeah. And you're supposed to attach yourself to that kind of persona and think, all right, he came, he looked at it, he fucked off, it must be rubbish, right? Yeah, exactly. So they try and make you attached to those kind of ways of thinking, and we need to be really careful about looking at the content of these people and not just the way that they're presenting themselves, right?
Don't be swayed by the NLP, the character, the persona, and the mannerisms, because these are all being utilised to portray things in your mind, to sway you by the image. You have an image of authority, of academia, that these people will present themselves at, and they're just trying to play to that mind frame that you're already existing in, and that will sway your opinions and your avenues of pursuit. So they're utilising every area of this. And if it's not that, you get some knob jockey who's just up there trying to make ridicule videos about flat earthers and all that, but they'll never offer you any tangible proof, measurable proof of their absurd claim. They're just trying to, play to this image that's been perpetuated in your mind of flat earthers being idiotic cavemen that existed a long time ago that were just retarded. And that's what they're trying to invoke continually. Again, we know these people. We don't believe we live on a pizza dish floating in the vacuum of space. We refuse the bullshit that's been offered to us. And that's
on both sides, still.
Exactly. On both sides, exactly. And again, we have to speak to that because it's happening on both sides of the false dichotomy. You've got these players that are professing they're flat earthers who you have to question and say, well, where's their intellectual honesty? Where is their real pursuit of truth and understanding when they continually invoke strawman cartoons, invoke red herrings and fallacious logic left, right and centre? It's an absolute shit show. And I don't want to be part of any of that. I'm looking for real, honest people who are interested in it and think they've got something to offer. And again, I'm just going to, put that out there that we actively invite anybody to come to the table. Don't care who you are. If you think you've got something to offer, by all means, bring it to us. If you've got something that's tangible, that's true, I will accept it, and so will Gav.
Yep.
But we don't get that. We get zealots, we get propaganda, we get the same nonsense over and over again.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and again, looking at both sides, there are players on both sides. We know of the enormity and the seriousness of this situation, the gravity of this situation, right, that we're in. That there's going to be players on both sides, and they're going to be trying to control this agenda. So, I'm sorry to say it, but there may be people out there who you think are your friends who aren't, right?
That's it.
So you need to be very careful with them too.
We can only play those games when people are not operating from their own discernment and their own logic and reasoning. If you're not standing firm in your own being, you will be swayed by the psyop, the psychological manipulation. That's what's going on, and there's layers to it that you have to understand. NLP, as we talked about, the subtlety of how they express and present themselves, the mannerisms, the way they speak, the way they phrase things, the subtle eye movements, the smirky expressions when certain phrases are uttered. These are all tricks of a hypnotist, people who are trying to keep you under a spell. Okay? You're not going to get any of that for us. You're just going to get straight to the point, straight down the line. Fucking direct talk. Okay, You're not trying to manipulate anybody into believing some belief or bias that I have or Gav has. We're talking about objectivity. Okay.
Yep. And one of the main things, Dale, is if you don't know, say you don't know. Don't make up some fucking metaphysical theory and sell it along with a t-shirt. That's not going to fly either.
I think you need to be windswept and interesting in order to be some sort of relevant figure in the world of society and all that crap.
No, spot on. Right, man, I'm just going to take a quick break. I'll be back in a minute.
No worries. just see here. So as I say, it's so difficult trying to condense the whole aspect of this. But everything we've spoke about is pretty obvious for anybody who's going to come across this now. You know, it's been perpetuated as two sides doing battle, and it's really not the case. That's just the smoke and mirrors to try and keep people's focus and attention on irrelevant aspects, okay? Because they don't want you needling down right into the relevant aspects and eradicating the fluff. They're quite happy and content, you know, if people are, you know, perpetuating dichotomies and arguments and sides and all this fucking stuff. Because if that's where people's attention is, then nothing's ever going to progress. They're going to maintain this dominance and this narrative that they're trying to push onto people. And again, you know, you have to ask the question, are you willing to allow your children to be subjected to bullshit and lies and manipulation? I don't think the majority of people really are. So, you know, if you think it's irrelevant for that aspect, you should be having a real look at this. You know, if you care about your children, the innocents that are coming up after you, if you don't care about yourself and it doesn't matter to you, it should matter to you that your children are going to be affected by this. And I, for one, care about that. I want to be responsible for my children. Right? No handing them to strangers, where government narratives are handed down to do-gooders, people who are just getting patted on the back, the teachers, the lecturers, that just want to be relevant and important and have a secure job with a mortgage and all that package. Okay? I'm not going to hand my children over to that to be mind-warped and fucked psychologically and emotionally. These aspects that we're talking about may continue, but it's an inevitability that this has to come to the forefront. This has to be addressed. And it's up to people who come across this, who understand it and who are passionate, to stand firm in it, to represent it properly, not to add in unnecessary fluff and more confusion. And the people who are doing that, I can see them a mile away. So should you. You don't need to give these people your attention. This is what they depend on. The whole game is a war for your attention. So if you remove your attention and you refuse to buy the products, and I don't mean the bottle of aftershave from the shop, I mean the products in regards to narratives, stories that are coming through government institutions about, you know, aspects of who we are and what life is. These are products that people are buying. They are concepts and ideas that people are buying into, giving them their attention. And through that ignorance and apathy, they're passing it on to other generations. That's not a true existence. That's an existence of lies and deceit, delusion. And you're going to come here and tell me you're a caring, loving person and you care about your kids? Utter bullshit. Start taking responsibility. So, you know, I've got that kind of bit out the road. So I want to get the next aspect. I had a wee meet up here on Saturday, here at my home, and honestly, you know, I was so humbled by just people coming from, you know, all over the UK, but also, you know, I had people sending stuff through the post. You know, I can't thank you people enough. You know, I've got some names here, and I don't mean to leave anybody out. It's just a few names that stuck out in regards to the distance that people travel. So like Nathan and Vince, you know, people that are coming from London and Ireland, and, you know, Des and his partner coming from Birmingham. People travelled all this way just to make contact, to meet in person and say hello. And it was it was my privilege, it was my pleasure to have you people here on Saturday, and for me it was great. just, relaxed social interaction of people talking about relevant aspects and no mindless chit chat about favourite colours and what's your favourite football team. And, it was really, really good. So, much respect and much appreciation to all you guys that showed up here on Saturday. It was, as I say, it was really humbling. Also, I have to thank massively my partner Emma, who, spent the whole of Friday and Friday night making food and prepping food and cakes. Also Xander and Harley and Xander's wee pal, his mother, Dan, crazy Polish flat earther or crazy Polish man, his partner, baking cakes and bringing them here as well. I mean, absolutely humbling to see the efforts that people go to just to make it a nice experience. Also need to thank Kazimierz and Veronica for the baskets of fruit and muffins. I mean, absolutely humbling again. It was a wonderful wee surprise, and thank you very much. Also to the woman who sent us the wee picture frame, absolutely beautiful. I know that you created that yourself with your child, and we have it hanging in the house now. So absolutely beautiful people. And again, it's the difference for me of what you perceive and what you think's real online. Again, I'm on here, representing objectivity. I'm not here trying to show you personality and win you over by personality and play all these manipulative fucking games. There's many other people here that are doing that and trying to, champion online communities. Fuck all that. Meet people in reality. Understand the situations you're getting yourself involved in. Coming to my home and it being a nice, calm, relaxed setting, is perfect. Running out into the street with strangers you don't know, getting militant, that's a total other aspect I don't agree with and I discourage. But, social interactions for people who want to reach out and find like minds, there's nothing better than that. So, again, I'm thanking everybody. I'm not leaving names out, deliberately or anything like that. It's just a few of the names that are coming to mind. But it was a pleasure to meet every single one of you, and I look forward to the next one. I'll get one going very soon. Humbling to see that, as I say, people travelling from as far as London and Ireland, to come here just to say hello and shake my hand, and appreciation and respect, mutual respect is humbling and wonderful. So I can't thank you enough, people. And again, Emma, massive thank you for putting up with all this and putting yourself in there and making that effort. It's special, people. So
I'm glad to hear it went very well, Dale.
Aye.
And absolutely, what would we be without our partners?
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to get that back on you. You're there. Exactly, mate.
But, and you're quite right. There's a huge difference between having conversations with real people, in the real world, intellectually stimulating, talking about topics, right? Yeah. And this whole online scenario where people pretend to be what they're not, or pretend to be truthful when they're not. When we can see they're deceitful. So, you don't get away with that in real life. That's the thing. You can pull people up. You can have respectful conversations. People don't get up to the same shenanigans that they do if they're, anonymous behind a keyboard. So It's a whole different conversation, isn't it? Exactly. And I'm really glad you had a great time. So and everybody else, I hope too. So.
For all these zealots and experts that constantly bombard us and hit us with all that shite. Again, the invitation was open to all these people, but again, that doesn't happen in reality. Again, it's affecting people and warping people's perceptions. If you're attached to this and your emotions are involved in it, these aspects are going to play a role. They're going to eat you up. They're going to affect you psychologically, emotionally. It's going to affect your everyday reality. If you're attaching yourself to this thing here, you have to be strong and recognise the boundary and the line. And when you're overstepping it and putting too much into this, because it doesn't mean anything. None of these clowns exist here in the real world. They'll never approach you like that because they know that it's crossing the boundary, So
Yep, exactly. I wish I could have been there, but maybe the next time.
Yeah.
So.
No, definitely. Well, the next time you're going to be here, we'll arrange one.
Aye, that'd be great. Right?
Aye. No, as I say, it was so nice. A couple of surprises, and some of the people that arrived. But for people to come for that distance, as I say, it's humbling. That people would go to such effort.
Well, it speaks for you, Dale, and for Emma, I think so.
Mm-hmm. Aye.
Yep. No, it's good to see people making the effort as well. Yep.
Aye, and that's it. And again, I appreciating people's respect and manners for being in somebody else's home. It was great.
Did you manage to get everybody out at a decent time, aye? Did you?
Well, I didn't want to, but I was flagging. I had been up really early, and obviously the prep the day before, and then the morning and the whole afternoon. So I was getting that way. So
Yep.
I hope nobody was offended by my subtle hints, But sometimes when you're tired, and again, I didn't want to do that because I say people had travelled so far, but you know yourself when you're flagging, you're flagging.
No, absolutely. I'm just laughing at the thought of you doing a subtle hint like "get the fuck."
Aye.
But I know exactly what it's like at the end of the day. Sometimes you just wish it would all finish quickly, So I'm sure everybody was fully understandable.
And to be honest with you, I wish I had the facilities and the space because I'd welcome people to stay. I could have slept in the shed, whatever, but I just didn't have the amenities. I'd nothing to offer people. So if I had it there, then people would have been more than welcome to stay. So.
You need a bigger garden, everybody can bring their tents by them.
Aye. Aye, and other people as well. Steve, I just want to say a big thanks to Steve as well. Steve knows what the thanks is about, So no need to go any further with that. But there's so many people. Again, I don't want to leave people out. People think it's a competition. It's not. I want to appreciate everybody that made the efforts and show that respect and appreciation back to them. So if I never mentioned your name, it's no because of any other.
It's because Dale hates you.
Aye. It's because you get muck on my fucking rug or something,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure people appreciate it because it is a good thing to, I'm sure there's still a lot of people who maybe don't have people that they can talk to, Dale.
Yeah.
That they're still, if I look at still in my surroundings, I would say everybody in the village that I live in, I can talk to. Everybody knows, right?
Yeah.
We can have discussions. But if you're meeting somebody else that I'm sure there's lots of people there who don't really have friends that they can discuss openly and honestly with, So I wish everybody gets one, because I think that's when it will progress, and that's why it's so important to have that word to word, mouth to mouth, man to man, woman to woman talks, and not get lost online,
Exactly. It's draw yourself back and recognise the line, So
yeah.
Well, future hangouts, I think the next one's probably going to be Saturday. So for me, Gav, I really want to talk about this aspect of what force is.
Yes.
So I think, the first topic of discussion on Saturday is going to be one of the aspects is what is a force. And, we're going to separate that from what we call the natural objective world, and I'm going to bring it into the realms of the physicality of a human being, and tracing it right back to the fundamentals there of what force actually is. But that's just one aspect. I'm sure we're going to have other aspects of discussion on the Saturday evening. So again, I'm going to let people know if you're interested in any of those aspects, let us know and you can come on and we can have a chat about it. If we do open up to the general public, it's going to be in regards to the specific topics of discussion that are brought up on that Saturday or whatever hangout it may be, and that's what we want to centre it around. We want to have topics of discussion, and that's what we're focused on, and that's what we have the relevant discussions about afterwards. So.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in the fluff anymore. Can't be bothered with any of that shite. So only useful aspects of discussion are we're going to be putting our attention to. So.
And I think force is a good one to start with, Del. There's so many things that we can talk about around that topic. I see lots of discussions on what the actual meaning of a force is.
Yeah.
And it gets bandied about in so many different variations. I think it's time to look, not only at the history of where that comes from, what force meant in the 1700s. I'd like to talk a little bit about vis viva, which is a certain, how should I say, big mathematical discussion and topic that lasted about 100 years that is very much to do with, the bullshit that we're told.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of aspects I'd like to bring into that as well. So I think it'll be a very good discussion.
Exactly. I'm also going to be focusing a bit on the social aspects of psychology, interaction, consciousness. These are always aspects and topics that I've got a real passion for. So I want to speak directly to some certain topics of discussion and focus purely on that from one hangout to the other. So it's not a mix and mash of just jumbled up nonsense going on.
Well, it makes the content easier to identify afterwards. So if people, want to look at a hangout that has a lot to do with a certain topic, then I think, it'll be a lot easier, because I think one of the problems, let's say, with the old format was at least that, a hangout covered multiple topics. And whilst that might appeal then to a general thing, it never gave us always the opportunity to go into as much detail as we wanted.
Exactly.
So,
it's also for the aspect of, people want to share it or point anybody that they know is asking the question about a particular avenue. There's a nice, concise, as you say, topic of discussion going on that they can come and engage with. So we'll be doing that as of Saturday. So hopefully people are willing to engage in it and take part in it. Always interested to hear what other people have got to offer in regards to what we're discussing. So.
Yep. Aye. Cool, man. Well, I won't keep you.
Nice one, mate.
I know you actually wanted a wee shorter one tonight, but...
No, it's difficult. You always have these intentions, mate, but it's, as I say, trying to condense it, it's so difficult, and having an idea or vision in your mind is not always how it's going to unfold either, so we're just going to keep trying different aspects, and we can just keep being honest and trying to pursue whatever we pursue,
Yep. Well, I'd just like to, before I go, just reiterate again, one of the key aspects, and it's this differentiation of the visible and the physical world. Yeah. Don't let them tell you nonsense. Differentiate and discern between the two at all times, across all the different sciences, across all the different domains of expertise or professions, right?
Yeah.
And if you do that, then you'll see the bullshit easier, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. And again, learn how your mind works, look at the aspects of your own physiology, how you come to understand things, how you come to believe things, what you believe, what you know, what the difference is, all these kind of aspects. And then look at the words and the bullshit you're being told, the rhetoric, the grammar, the logic. I know I'm just repeating it, Dale, but these three things are for me the important things that will bring us all further.
It's the same, it's the counter to the bullshit, it's repetitive. They just keep coming with the repetition. So unfortunately for us, there is no progression of the discussions, because until we get beyond this point, it's just going to be the case. It is a battle of constantly meeting the crap with repetition, because that's all they're offering. So
scientific constipation is all they have.
Exactly, mate. Exactly.
All right, I'm going to say bye to everybody, and I'll speak to you soon, my man.
Cheers, mate.
Take care.
Cheers, bud. Aye, so hello everybody in the chat. How are you all doing? He's alright. Have you any questions, anything they want to say? This Tyler Woods, another, one of these aspects, because flat earthers have done so much for science. Again, this is another manipulative aspect of trying to tie honest people into the realms of, a created propaganda flat earthers or anybody that questions the globe. So it doesn't matter how many times you openly, you know, and the whole category of myself and other people that have been here have expressed this time and time again, they will still continually try and misrepresent you and lump you in with this utter crap, nonsense propaganda. More reflections of the zealotry, the dishonesty from this globe cult and its idiotic zealot disciples. We're not tolerating it, okay? You're morons. You're holding the progress of human beings backwards. You're trying to retard people and keep them in a retarded state of mind with your nonsensical gibberish and absurd professions of physics and non-physics, right? Take your imagination, your imaginary concepts and ram them right up your ass. You can continually try and misrepresent people like me all you like. The only thing it's going to do is make us more determined. I'm sick of telling you people this. More determined to dig my heels in and to push even harder. Maybe that's your game. It's working. Because I am not going anywhere. Globe tardedness. If you believe you live on a globe, you are retarded. Okay? You are a moron under a hypnotic trance. You're too weak and gullible to accept that you have bought into utter absurd bullshit. There is nothing practical, nothing demonstrable, nothing measurable, absolutely nothing that would justify anybody maintaining the belief that they live on the exterior of a oblate spheroid rock. It's a joke, and you people that continually try and defend it are jesters, total and utter lunatics, abusers of the innocent children that are being born into this idiotic realm, whatever it is. I see you, I know what you are, you know I know what you are. Credentials, again, are more tools of a cult zealot mindset. Requesting credentials, because that's the idiotic mindset that they buy into. They don't come to the level of sentience and respecting another sentient being for what they are and engaging at that level. They need to utilise manipulation tools of appealing to authority and appealing to anything out with their own discernment. It's just projections of their weakness. They're displaying the weak psychology that they hold. It's so obvious. It's childlike. It's pathetic. Anyway, to all the rational, sane people, I bid you a good evening. Farewell. See you all very soon. Mods, much appreciated as always. Take care of yourselves, people. Bye.